One creative response was a little congregation, about 50 members in Canton, Ohio. They had a lot of conflict that had happened in their history, and they had developed a behavioral covenant, and they wanted to find a way of living into it. So their committee on ministry developed covenant cards. I don't know if you remember, Spencer Gifts used to have like little booklets of coupons you could give on Valentine's Day, good for a back rub, good for a kiss. Well, they came up with covenant cards with things like right to decline card or oops card, I made a mistake. So again, you've got these, but there's an example of how they creatively try to live their covenant.
So these are some examples of when you are trying to live into a document liturgically. Look for that, like the responsive reading from James Luther Adams. Invite a sermon, invite reflections from people to be woven into worship as a way of building up that undergirding of why covenant is deeply important and expressive of who we are. Other ways to make it living include, we talked about how in meetings, always good to read a covenant at the beginning of meetings. Congregations that don't have covenants yet, leadership covenants are a good way to begin with the board and committees putting their meeting covenants into place before moving on. After a meeting, look at your group process. Have a process check-in. How did we do? What could we do better next time? And then on another level, the Committee on Ministry, weaving the covenant in as a part of how we assess the congregational life. How are we doing? Are we being the community that we hold ourselves up as wanting to be? And then it's a part of faith development. This little guy is not getting what he wants out of his RE program on that particular day. But covenant is a great topic around history, around principles, around values, around some of the people we pointed to today to weave into faith development. Covenant is deeply a part of small group ministry, working out the covenants for the group each year as the small groups pick up again. So you can see all these different ways. It's not like one monolithic way of using it, but building it into each one of these expressions of congregational life, making it a part of how new members learn who is this community that I'm joining and how am I going to fit in here. There's a lot of learning for new members to have. Then, of course, the next question is, well, what do we need to do when we fail? And we will fail at covenant. It's guaranteed because these are our efforts to try to live in this way with each other. The first thing is to be able to name the behavior that broke with the community, to be able to state what it is, and to do that in a direct communication, one person to another, or between groups that need to reconcile in the congregation. So first of all, there's the naming of it. Next, there is needing to focus on understanding how did this affect the person who felt failed by the covenant, or the group, or the whole congregation, if the person's break with covenant is seen as having an impact on the congregation as a whole. Inviting the person who transgressed the covenant to come back into covenant and to reconnect, to deeply reconnect and re-honor the expectation that we're trying to live up to. And then to move on from that to say, okay, what can we learn from that? We want to affirm our desire to be connected together. So what do we do next to affirm what we've learned and to move forward? Ultimately, the goal is to be able to move forward together. This is why we talk about covenant is far more valuable and useful in day-to-day congregational life than a disruptive behavior policy, which is for those extreme circumstances. But the covenant is what is our learning commitment to stay in community together and to grow together. And even when we find that we fail each other, to be able together to move on to whatever our next steps are.